I think that's Commissioner Keating.
Time now for one more thing. I had a friendly neighborhood dispute the other day. I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware. That's wrong. So walking rookie, okay? And poops. And I picked the poop up, put it in a bag, tie it up.
Everyone, you are, even though your meeting hasn't started, you are now live on YouTube. So I just wanted you to be aware. It doesn't sound like you're saying anything inappropriate, but wanted to make sure you knew just in case.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for the warning.
It's hard to do small talk through the internet while everyone's staring at each other.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Good. Yeah, with this process, everyone can hear my quiet commentary to the people on my left. I'm behaving today.
Tom, it looks like we've hit 4 o'clock. Should we start the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the City of Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, April 22nd. It's now 4 o'clock. And we'll start with roll call. Please identify if you're connected. Mark Nelson.
Here.
Steve Corey, here. Dave Neal.
Here.
Sean Keating. Megan Larson. Scott Walters.
Here.
Bob Wiley.
Here.
Isabel Call.
Here.
And ex officio members, Councilwoman Liz Strader.
Yep, here.
And Rochelle Klein.
Here.
Quorum being present, we'll go ahead and move on to business. The first thing is approval of the agenda. Hopefully you went ahead and got a copy of the agenda. Are there any comments on the proposed agenda?
Mr. Chair, I propose or make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as written. Is there further comment or motions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed with a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as written signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Thank you. So the first item after that is approval of the minutes from the February 26th, 2020 meeting. Are there comments on the draft? Are there comments or motions on the draft minutes?
Mr. Chair,
I move we accept the draft as written.
second.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes from the February 20th, 26th meeting be approved as written. Is there further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of approving the draft minutes from the February 26th meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Thank you. The motion passes by voice vote. Next on the agenda is community acknowledgement, and I guess probably the most important things related to this, of course, are situations that have arisen because of the coronavirus situation that we're in. Of course, the parks opening the get outside and get unplugged had to be postponed. And so for our recycle and the bicycle, we had hoped to be able to run it at the Public Works Expo, but that also has been canceled or postponed. I don't think we've finalized the deal, but at this particular point, we don't know specifically when that's going to occur. We will keep you informed as plans develop. Similarly, trash or treasure obviously becomes problematic with people moving around the city. So that has been postponed from the May 5th weekend. We'll have to figure out where that's going as we move forward. With those two pieces of information, are there, I guess, Tom, do you need to add anything to that announcement?
At this point, no, Mr. Chair. As more information develops, I'll be sharing it with the commission via email. Right now, I don't have any additional information for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Members of the commission, do you have any questions or comments on what we've just brought forth?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to maybe propose, considering that the purpose of Recycled Bicycle is to get the bicycles out of the landfill and into the hands of folks that could need them in today's weather, not later in, if it turns out to be June or July. I'm just curious if it would be possible to exercise part of that program, maybe one-on-one, or we deliver them. I'd be willing to support that if that's just not something that's, we'd want to do the logistics as far as the website and working with Parks and Rec and how all that works.
Mr. Chair,
Tom.
I just wanted to, in response to Commissioner Nelson's question, since that is a SWAC sponsored event in conjunction with Republic Services, it is at the pleasure of the commission to arrange that to be at a different time, different location, administered in a different way per agreement between the commission and Republic Services.
Now I'll entertain thoughts by Rochelle.
So, Mr. Chairman and commissioners, I did reach out to the chair and to Tom at least and said, we are happy to work in a different route if needed. So we currently deliver bikes to the food banks in Nampa and Caldwell. We're happy to work through the Meridian Food Bank as well. We have some people that have transportation issues just getting to the food bank. And so we've been equipping bikes with baskets on the front, like just cruisers and bikes that can help families get to the food bank if they need it. So that's one outlet. The other is we have worked with the police department and with to get bikes to people who've had DUIs. And so they have suspended licenses and maybe need a bike to get around while their licenses are suspended, I guess. So we are really flexible. I gave some bikes to the Boise VA today for their recreational program. We have some folks that are struggling. So they came over and I met them on site and gave them some bikes. So we're still moving bikes through. We still have a couple hundred in storage. And we have probably maybe 75 at the transfer station. So we're definitely ready if you guys decide to go another route besides Unplugged, the Meridian Unplugged event. So, I mean, just let us know and however you want to work that. Like maybe it's not open on the park site website, Tom or Mr. Chairman, but maybe it's through the schools. We have historically worked with a couple of the schools each spring to get students bikes and nobody's in school. So we can still reach out to those teachers. Meridian Middle, we usually work with a couple of the counselors there this time of year to get kids bikes before summer. We can reach out to those folks and see if they know what the needs are, even though school is out. So we have lots of options right in Meridian if you guys choose to do something different. And we have lots of bikes.
Lots of bikes. Thank you. Well, it sounds like bikes are getting into the to the people that need them, and maybe I'd be interested in just pay attention to when those dates might come about for Parks and Rec or the because also part of that is the fixing the bikes and the relationship with handing out helmets and all that through St. Luke. So there's more to it than just our spot. But if nothing was going to happen, I thought it'd be worth considering. But maybe we can just stay aligned with that program as is unless it gets canceled.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a comment. I think it would be great to try to find a way to continue getting people bikes that need them. And I would just suggest, trying to find a way to do it that complies with that sort of social distancing type of approach. So things like the food bank, they already have a process in place from what I understand. To try to do that. So I think as long as we're really being thoughtful about how, we approach it, and maybe if that program looked different, but people were signing up online or something, that might work. So I think it's great people are being creative, trying to find a way to still meet the needs of folks.
I guess what I would go ahead and say at this particular point is, thank you, Rochelle. Obviously, the program is still continuing and working. The point really is trying to come up with a way that SWAC has a presence to go ahead and emphasize this activity. And I guess I am open to thoughts. If people want to go ahead and wait until we get through this, potentially at the end of the month, and then look at a place where we can do it safely. I certainly understand that. That's only about 10 days away. But if someone's got a target for a time when we could get together, that should be mentioned to us, and we can go ahead and get all the other commissioners aware of that potential event and see if we can't bring forth all of the things that we have online as far as people being able to sign up and everything else to support that event. So I think where we're at this point is if anyone has a event that they think we could work with, get it to either Tom or I, and we'll go ahead and start seeing if we can pull all the rest of the stuff together to make that happen. Unless anyone's got any thoughts on
I have a question.
how we proceed with the situation.
I have a question. Somebody hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear you.
Bob.
Okay. My question is, this is a new experience for me with the bikes here in Meridian. And what is it specifically that's inhibiting us from doing that event? Now, number one, we have to get the bikes. And I don't see a real issue to that.
Correct.
Number two, we have to correct or maintain the bikes or whatever maintenance we have to do. And we have a social distancing issue there, but I don't think it's a severe one. Am I online here?
Yes, you are. And I think, Rochelle, do you have anything to add to that? If people were free to go ahead and refurbish bikes, could Republic go ahead and support them over at your yard?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely can. Oh, no, sorry, my daughter's practice. She's popping in and out. She's got a choir class in the background at College of Idaho. So sorry if you come and go. So when I unmuted myself, you'll hear some opera in the background. But yeah, that's awesome. But anyway, back to that. No, we have volunteers still coming on Thursdays to fix up bikes. So we have the tools and we have the supplies, and we can definitely set people up in separate areas, 6 feet apart. If you guys wanted to come out and work on bikes at our facility, we have tubes, we have all the parts and all of the materials out there. So if we're looking at doing an event together to get the bikes ready, we can do that. And we can even do a giveaway at our lot. I mean, we're all working remotely except for the people at the transfer station. So we have a huge parking lot. It would have to be after May 1st because we are pretty strict about following the governor's orders during this window. So, but after that time, depending on what happens on the 1st, we can definitely get together and work even after, the social distancing orders is like lessened, I guess. We're happy to provide space, and we have the tools and things like that. So anytime. We have definitely like 75 bikes at any one point in time that need to be repaired, but they're just pretty easy repairs at our office.
So Bob, yes, that problem can be taken care of.
Yeah.
The next issue is getting people to request the bike and distributing those bikes to the appropriate people. That's, again, a communications and a transportation issue. And I don't see we're too restricted in that right now. If we could do that with personal vehicles and just one at a time, if we had to, we could probably do that.
Yeah.
The issue that I see is getting it out to the public saying, we've got these bikes available, who wants one?
So, Bob, my concern was that the program currently, would this be our third year? Third year?
I think I can't remember, it's third or fourth. Is it
I think it's
fourth?
fourth.
It's the fourth. Yeah, it's our 4th year.
So the program's kind of become a branded program that's visible during, a public event. And so there's other related things happening at that time. I was just concerned that if that event gets canceled, that Republic Services has this pool of bikes, and we would have to do it right. We would set up the website, have people apply for those and give us criteria, girls or boys and sizes and those sorts of things. And then we would meet the demand. It's just that we may not have an event. But part of that event was also being visible and helping fix existing bikes. So it was just supplying a bike is only part of that program in my mind. And I've just kind of thrown it out there that in the event that we cancel that program or the Public Works program, that we do something to get those back out into the system. So we can kind of play that by ear based on the next couple of weeks, what we learn from the city on when that's decision gets made or a date gets set.
And to add to what Commissioner Nelson is saying, we I think we slimed probably 400 or 600 tires last year. So, I mean, Commissioner Walters, Commissioner Nelson, I mean, you guys were all there. We, and Commissioner Corey, Chairman Corey, I mean, we really slimed, like, so that's part of it too, is people with perfectly healthy bikes come through and we just pump up the tires and tighten things and slime them and get them back on the road. So we try to bring more people in and tell them what we're all about with the Solid Waste Advisory Commission and the Recycle a Bicycle project. And so, yeah, the visibility is really important. I mean, I think we can definitely do something. This year is such an odd year, and I think we'll be back in, you know, in regular form next year. But certainly, if we figure out a way to accomplish what we normally do during the Unplugged week elsewhere, I think that'd be great to just get that team together and get everybody back out in the community. There's real value in that.
I agree.
And I would just propose that we try to align with that program if we can, and then if the next few weeks we know we can't, that maybe at our next meeting we propose an alternative solution.
I have an idea. If they're going to do movie nights again, which probably won't happen anytime soon at the local park, maybe there's an opportunity to have some bicycle giveaways there.
Oh yeah, there might be another event that might suit the same need.
Stand by.
Okay. Stand by.
Know that the channel is open. If you spot a good event, please go ahead and recommend it. We'll go ahead and pull this together.
Thank you,
Further
Mr. Chair.
comments?
I think that makes sense. I think maybe the Parks Department has a lot on their plate right now, but they should just let us know how things play out, what events are coming up. And I'm sure Mr. Neri could advise us on when the governor's order is lifted, like what that looks like and what the restrictions will be at that. Like we'll know more, I think, in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I can add to that, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think the city's going to take a phased approach in how things come back, but I think it is good to have this conversation, knowing that, you know, we may do this in a different rollout or a different way rather than at one big event like we've done in the past. And the movie night might be an option. I don't know. We'd have to talk to the Parks Department, but that certainly, there's certainly going to be opportunity to do this. So I think it's a good conversation to have.
Perfect. Thank you. Further comments? Okay, please, if you see a potential event, pass it back to us and we'll mobilize. And with that, we move on to program report. I want to thank our guest, Catherine Chartrudi. This Orange Bag event has been something that's that the Treasure Valley has enjoyed as something that they have as a unique event, but of course it's been rather a rough start and such, but we really appreciate Catherine joining us to be able to talk about the program and give a status of what's going on. So with that, Catherine, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind making note that the Commissioner Keating, Commissioner Larson have joined us too while we're having the other conversation. So,
thank you.
All right, well, if we can get started. This is my first Zoom presentation, so bear with me. We'll see how we do. Thank you for inviting me today, and happy Earth Day, by the way. So we'll be talking about the HEFTY Energy Bag program. I've built into the presentation a number of kind of stops where I thought it might be best to sort of, if we could hold your questions until we get through a little section and then open it up for questions, it might be less awkward than knowing who wants to talk. So I've built in about 3, I think maybe 4 stops where I'll just stop and ask if there are any questions and be able to answer specific questions in that manner. So, all right, let's see if we can start this here. Next slide. So there's my contact information. Hopefully everyone will be able to retain a copy of this slide of the PowerPoint so you can look at some of the details later. Next, please. I'm going to start a little bit with background, partly because there may be some new folks and partly because it happened long enough ago that maybe we forgot some things or didn't realize kind of how it all started. So we're going to go through a little bit of background. The program is a program designed and owned by, it's trademarked and registered by Reynolds Consumer Products because of the HEFTY brand is a Reynolds brand. And then we have Dow Plastics. They are the packaging rosin supplier for a lot of the flexible films that are out there in the marketplace. And Reynolds is a purchaser of those films. So it is a program that the two organizations, international companies, of course, have designed. It was designed to address those hard to recycle plastics, the things that we were putting in the landfill. And most communities, in fact, are still having to landfill those materials. In particular, films, wraps, and bags, and that includes all of the packaging films, cereal box liners, chip bags, candy wrappers, all those kinds of things that typically in most communities are going into the landfill. Some of the other things that the program was designed to take were toothpaste tubes. Not something you think that could be recycled or recovered in any way. Plastic straws, plastic cutlery. What's unique here in the Boise area, the Treasure Valley, is that we can also take rigids that are labeled 4 through 7s. None of the other programs in the country take those, although I think over time that will change. And we can talk about a little bit of the changes later that are potential. So again, takes those plastics out of the landfill, utilizes them for energy recovery and ultimately for recycling. And the goal of the program is to provide households the opportunity to divert those additional materials. It's really very much a consumer choice program. Participation is really very voluntary in all of the communities that they are serving. Next slide. Plastic. It has become one of the top materials landfilled. And if you look through your household, you see how many materials are in plastic. What's interesting about it is that I've seen this in this time of COVID-19, how much single-use plastics are being really actually promoted going to the grocery store again. You know, they don't want me to bring in my reusable bags because of the potential for transmitting the disease. So it's going to be interesting going forward how we get back to sort of that reduce, reuse, recycle component and trying to reduce the amount of single-use plastics. It's going to be an interesting change for all of us to sort of negotiate our way through here in the next, I think, few months and maybe ongoing for the few years. Next slide. So the HEFTY Energy Bag program, again, is innovative. And as Steve mentioned, innovation comes with risk and uncertainty. And that is something that is unique to this community, that we were all willing to sort of take on that uncertainty and that risk so that we could build a program that really does divert unique materials from the landfill. One component of the program is designed to empower the marketplace. Dow in particular is the lead on finding additional opportunities to recycle and recover these materials. And they are avidly looking for every potential opportunity out there to take these materials and make something new out of them. When you look at the EPA hierarchy for waste management, the number 1 is reduce, number 2 is recycle, and way down the list is energy recovery. And so really right now, the most well-developed opportunities are in energy recovery for the materials, but ultimately the goal is to have full cycle recycling of these materials in the marketplace. The program started with pilot programs in Citrus Heights, California and Omaha, Nebraska. Citrus Heights is unique and Republic Services is the hauler there, so they had some experience with the program there. The materials at Citrus Heights were actually taken to a company in Tigard, Oregon called Agilix. Agilix at that time was doing pyrolysis to recover the material for petroleum as well as for plastic, to make new plastics. They moved away from a broad range of materials. So Agilix right now is focused on polystyrene recovery. And Citrus Heights program ceased because their pilot program ceased because they didn't have any other really good resources for the materials they were collecting. Omaha, Nebraska, from the very beginning has used their materials to go to a cement kiln for energy production. That program kind of started as a pilot, and they continue to expand that program in Omaha to add additional communities there. And both of those pilot programs served around 1 million people. Materials, I'll kind of jump forward there. As of February of this year, just to kind of give you the big picture idea, more than 300 tons of plastics have been shipped for energy use or recycling out of the HEFTY Energy Bag program, and that's across the US and into Canada now. Next slide. So in 2017, Dow funded a grant program for an ongoing grant with Keep America Beautiful, and they managed the grants. The goal again was primarily to divert these plastics for energy production. Happy Family Brands, located here in Boise, makes the little pouches for baby food and toddlers food. So if you've got kids running around that are using those, they were really concerned about producing a product that we're all buying for our children and our grandchildren that had to go to the landfill. So they saw an opportunity here to support the grant application. So Happy Family took the lead on it. Boise City supported them and put in a grant application for $50,000. We are the smallest community to date to ever receive a grant. Cobb County, Georgia also received the $50,000 grant that year. They serve around 1 million people. They have phased the implementation of their program in Cobb County, and in fact, it's still not done. They're still working at phasing it in. Happy Family also provided funding for public education and outreach to support the grant, and the city of Boise funded an additional over $500,000 to support the program. Next. So the Boise program started in the spring of 2018. Boise elected to deliver more than 72,000 packages of the HEFTY energy bags to the residential households in Boise that were signed up for recycling services. I will add something kind of interesting about the HEFTY energy bag program that is unique for this community versus all of the others as well, is because this community is also collecting those rigids 4 through 7. We asked Dow and Reynolds at the time to provide a larger bag because we knew that the original bag size is 8 gallons. We knew that that wasn't going to be adequate for all of the materials that could go in the bag here. The other driver for that was that we had every other week recycling. And so if we were picking up, folks could potentially use more than one bag every time they set it out because the bag wasn't big enough. The original packages were 8-gallon bags, 20 bags, and we asked them to do 26 bags, which matched every other week recycling for 1 per every set out, and the larger bags, and they agreed. They had to specially tool the factory to make those bags for this valley. That's how invested Reynolds is in this program, that they completely shifted their production to meet a completely different size and demand. And so I think that really shows how much commitment these organizations have to the long-term success of this program. Western Recycling is responsible for sorting the bags on the sort line and baling them for shipment. In 2019, the city provided residents in Boise with vouchers for retail redemption. About 20% of the households in Boise redeem those, and that's the most current numbers I have. That may be a little off, but within that 20% range. The interesting thing is that retail sales, even outside of the vouchers, just pure retail sales of the energy bag packages has stayed very strong throughout the implementation of the program here in the Boise area. And so folks, if they run out, they're not necessarily waiting for somebody to give them another voucher or give them another package of bags. They're going out and buying the bags. So it's a pretty large commitment that we've seen from the community itself. As you know, Meridian, Eagle, Garden City, and Ada County are all involved in the program. Ada County is looking at providing a voucher that will go out in the October billing for their customers. And so we're working on the voucher design all of the agreements with Ada County for that program. Next. All right, so we're going to stop right here, and I'm going to let you ask questions. That was a really fast overview.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So Catherine, you said that 300 tons for energy use and recycling. Can you break that down? How much of that 300 tons is incinerated? How much is recycled?
So I can't break it down, but I can do this answer. None of it is incinerated. None of the facilities where these materials have gone to are incineration facilities. Some of the, and we'll talk a little bit more about that going on, and I have some slides for you on that, but they are used for energy recovery to offset other types of fuels. And so it is not an incineration process. So if you look at a waste to energy facility like Spokane County has, that is not the type of facility where these materials are going at all.
So the cement kilns, for example, that firing cement kilns.
Yeah, and we'll there's some more slides coming.
Okay.
Specifically about the cement kiln process.
Is any of the plastic bags from Boise or the Treasure Valley going toward recycling at all, or is it all going toward, what did you say, what waste energy recovery?
So we've had several shipments that have gone to other locations, Texas, Louisiana, and Canada, where they have tested the materials for recycling. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later too, but they've gone for testing for railroad ties, pallet deck materials, park benches, trucks, car stops. So they're being tested in a variety of locations. And that is really the long-term goal of the program, is to find and support those kinds of businesses that can recycle these materials into new products.
Commissioners, further questions or comments for what we've seen so far?
All right, shall we move?
Continue, Catherine.
All righty. So Western Recycling is our local MRF, is processing about 35 to 40 tons of materials per month. So that's 35 to 40 tons of materials that are not going into our landfill, where they're kept forever, essentially. The fiscal year for 2020, so starting October 1st of last fall, we've collected 8,070 cubic yards, 261,000 bags, and about 202 tons out of the Boise area. So a fairly significant amount of material coming out of the area. Next. So here are the end markets. They continue to be identified and audited. And again, they've been tested or used for cement production. And in cement production, the materials are actually incorporated directly into the kiln with the rock that is crushed and ground and creates the coke that makes the cement. And so it is offsetting the use of coal. Coal is the primary material used in the cement kilns to fire them up and get them hot enough to convert the rock to the cement. The goal of the cement kiln folks that we have been working with are looking at 30 to 40% offset of coal using waste-derived fuels or refuse-derived fuels. You'll see it referred to as both. And so the environmental impact of offsetting the use of coal is significant. Most of the kilns also use natural gas to fire up and start. Once they start, they run 24/7. It's an amazing process. So cement production, again, incorporated directly into the coal, offsetting the coal into the kilns. Pyrolysis, there are two facilities. Renewlogy, as you know about, is our local one in Salt Lake City. Their goal is to have off-road diesel fuel production from the plastics. Nexus Fuels is located in the southeast, and they are working with Cobb County, Georgia on their materials. They create, like Agilix in Tigard, Oregon, when Agilix started up, they create the plastics feedstock to make new plastics, as well as fuels. Recycled materials, they've been tested out for benches, again, railroad ties. Concrete blocks are going to be a very interesting opportunity, and blocks and bricks. And I'm really excited about that one, because with all of the construction we've got going on in the Western United States, there's a lot of concrete blocks and bricks being built. And it can become an additive, and what they're finding is it actually strengthens the material. They are also testing out asphalt. And asphalt, you know, you've heard of glassphalt, where they include glass in the asphalt mix. They're actually including the plastics into the asphalt mix. And they've got 2 test sites going, one in South America and one at Midland, Michigan at Dow's headquarters. So a variety of opportunities that are being pursued and or underway already, and lots more to come as we move forward with the program. Next slide. So all of the HEFTY energy bag materials are managed by Reynolds. Reynolds pays for the shipping costs and the tip fees at any of these facilities. The costs of the bags include that market development and all of the program costs. Everything from making the bags, distributing the bags, marketing of the program, the shipping costs, the MRF cost, all of those costs are included in the cost of the bags. Their goal is that circular economy, and that it's promoted to ensure that we divert these materials from the landfill. Communities and MRFs are not responsible for the end markets or the shipping arrangements and fees or tip fees at those end markets. So it's a little bit different than all the other recycling that we're collecting in the area, where you know, the vagaries of the tip fees, the vagaries of the shipping industry are kind of borne by Republic and Western and the communities here locally. There is absolutely no risk to those materials with the HEFTY energy bag. That is on Reynolds to manage. And it takes away a lot of that uncertainty. And if there is a market spike or decline, it's on Reynolds to make that work in the long run. Again, Reynolds provides education and outreach materials for communities. So anytime Meridian would like additional information, everything from, I've got access to posters, to billing inserts, to store displays. I mean, we can tap into that at any time for continuing education and outreach. One of the things that Garden City asked for is like little social media posts, so that if you want to put out on your Facebook page for the City of Meridian, hey, by the way, don't do this or do that, we can develop those for you and provide them, and you get them out there. So it kind of keeps some of those public education and outreach costs down for communities as well. Next slide. All right, any questions about that information before we jump into Renewlogy?
Commissioners, questions or comments?
I have a comment. Just having those posters and those kinds of advertisements would be a good thing to remind people what goes in those bags. I'm not sure.
Oh. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I agree completely. And I think it's, as we emerge from this interesting time we're in right now, finding ways to be very creative with education and outreach, I think will be really critical. When Rochelle and I visited Omaha to see how their program operated back in, Rochelle, 2018, I guess it was, we saw some really interesting exhibits at a botanical garden there, and also at their zoo, the Omaha Zoo, which is an incredible place all by itself. And so there's just a lot of opportunities to be very creative with the education and outreach materials. One of the things the Omaha Zoo has done, which we could make available to you, and as a community, I mean, the entire valley, they had a raven that is trained to pick up the plastics and put the plastics in the right container, whether it goes into recycling or into the energy bag. And they've got a video of that you could post on YouTube and show people. And, you know, so there's lots of really cool things that we can do and to educate and inform even in this interesting time we're part of. So just, you know, brainstorm, let me know if you've got specific goals or requests, and we'll just work together to make it happen.
Catherine, I should have mentioned this during the first break. But I noticed on your one slide, and I noticed it directly when I was in Albertsons, but of course on the shelf, they've got them marked at $9.99 for picking up a roll of bags right there. And marked down to $8.99, and we want to give thanks where thanks is due. Is that something where Albertsons is discounting that dollar, and that's just coming out of their profit margin, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's a really good question because I've asked it as well. Reynolds' response was, Albertsons can put any price they want on the store shelf, and then, but they're committed. Their agreement with Reynolds is to sell those for $8.99. So it's probably a little bit of a marketing tool for Albertsons to make it look like they are on sale when in fact that is the price. And Reynolds has assured me that the price is not going to go up to $9.99. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. I observed that as well. And that's one of the reasons why I have this photograph is that was brought to my attention, and I immediately asked Reynolds about it and said, wait, what's going on here? Because I don't think any of us want that to be $9.99. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, thank you.
We will stay on top of that one too. So if you see any store post them for above $8.99, please let me know because that is really not the agreement for retail sales around here. And you will see, I did find this out, you will see that Home Depot was selling packages as well. But if you look close, they are less, but they are also the 8-gallon bags and 20, a package of 20. So they are not the standard bags for the Boise area. So folks may say, well, I could get them cheaper at Home Depot. Yes, they're getting them cheaper, but they're also smaller bags and fewer.
Members of the commission, further comments or questions?
I do have one question. At one time, wasn't part of the Orange Bag program's cost to survey some of the material and understand how good we were doing with that? Has that been updated in any way over time?
Absolutely. And you're going to see those slides in just a few minutes.
I knew it.
Oh, yay. Very, very good timing there. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really interesting information. You will enjoy seeing it. Shall we jump to pyrolysis and renewology?
Please do.
All righty. So renewology is a patented pyrolysis project. They are a startup company in Salt Lake City. They have created a very large system for Nova Scotia. It is a 3-unit system, and it is operational in Nova Scotia. That doesn't mean it's under operation. Nova Scotia was still building their MRF for their source separation of their materials. So I'm not sure if they're actually running the unit right now, but it is in place and it is operational. They did start in Salt Lake because of a lot of really positive opportunities for grants and loans for startup businesses there. That's to our benefit in the long term. Their goal is off-road diesel use, but the process itself could actually create a lot of different materials. It can actually, like Nexus and like Agilix and Tigard Oregon, it can create plastics that can be made into more plastics. They've just selected off-road diesel use because of the proximity of their facility to the refining operations there on the north side of Salt Lake City. And it makes it very easy for them to market and sell the materials there. The diesel is considered off-road because it doesn't have all of the fees paid that you have to pay for production diesel that would be used on road. So in that sense, it's fine quality wise. It is best when it is blended with raw fuel, new fuel, and it can be used for construction and agricultural equipment. The process was designed for rigid plastics 4 through 7. It was not designed for the flexibles, and that's where we ended up with the issues. Next slide. So flexible plastics and the contamination were the things they did not anticipate with their process. And so it requires additional pre-processing. I can talk. They have been working with Dow and Reynolds. Dow and Reynolds provided them some supportive funding to evaluate a number of designs. I believe they settled on 4 different designs and found through the process of kind of benchmarking them that an ag plastics process, which processes used ag plastics, works the best. And it worked best because it had a very sturdy design. It was used at high levels of contamination, lots of dirt, lots of debris, lots of non-acceptable materials. The negative maybe is that it is a Chinese manufacturer, and the equipment was built and ready to ship by the end of December. And China had everything set to ship it out mid-January, and they shut the country down. It shipped the end of March. Yay. It's on a boat. It's headed to the port at Long Beach and is expected to arrive at the port by the end of this month. However, it will take some time for it to go through customs inspection and approval from customs to be offloaded and then shipped to Salt Lake City. And as you know, California is probably even stricter than we are about shelter in place. And so it's really unknown at this point how long the inspection and approvals and offloading and shipping to Salt Lake will take. So the delivery and installation dates for the equipment, pretty much unknown. The goal is that it would be up and running by this fall. And we'll all cross our fingers that that can happen in a very timely fashion. When it hits Salt Lake, they're going to have to install the equipment itself, plus all of the electricals to run that. And so they're all ready. They just need it here in order to get it up and running. Next one. Just kind of to give you a little bit of statistics, kind of fun stuff, and there's tons out there. But an EPA 2012 report, which was kind of at the beginning of using pyrolysis for both energy use for transportation energy, as well as creating new plastic rosins, they found that 100 tons per day of pyrolysis of non-recyclable plastic, so those hard to recycle ones we're collecting, is equal to about 5,500 to 1,000 households' energy use a day. And that reduces CO2 emissions by up to 27,000 tons a year. It saves up to 32 million BTU units per ton as compared to landfill disposal. So EPA's report in 2012, even as an emerging technology, was very positive towards pyrolysis processes. And pyrolysis is not the same as incineration, and they oftentimes get confused. Pyrolysis is a closed system. It's similar to distillation that makes alcohol. And all of the materials are heated to a super temperature, up to 900 degrees, and they are distilled just like you would distill alcohol. It ends up with anywhere from 5 to 15% ash or char when it's done. And they have found that the ash char material is, for the most part, a benign product and can actually be used in construction. So it could be used in concrete production. It could be used as a binder. And but most communities are landfilling the materials at this time. All right, next. We're going to talk about cement kilns. Geocycle, who we've been working with, is a member of the Lafarge-Holcim Group. They are the leading manufacturer of cement in the United States. They use a state-of-the-art sustainable manufacturing system. Lafarge-Holcim is actually located in Europe. and a number of years ago purchased most of the the cement production facilities in the US. They have more than 30 years of co-processing experience using alternative fuels to fuel the cement kilns and process the concrete, making the cement, excuse me. It significantly reduces greenhouse gas emissions and it leaves no residue. And the cement kiln that we visited in February at Devil Slide, Utah, there is absolutely no material that leaves the site. There's no waste product that leaves the site. All of the materials are incorporated back into the cement, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And the next one. So 2 places have been used for the HEFTY energy bag: Sugar Creek, Missouri, which is where all of the Omaha materials have been going for the most part. And then Devil Slide, Utah did receive some of the materials from the Boise area. Devil Slide is used by area manufacturers in the Salt Lake area, including Kimberly-Clark. It was very interesting to visit the facility. They get shipments in from Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble, as well as another number of other plastics manufacturing companies. The Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark materials are the trimmings of making baby diapers. And so all of those plastics are brought on site. They're film, they're flexible, and they have a very high speed shredder that shreds all of those flexibles as well as the rigids and feeds it directly into the kiln as a replacement of coal, as I talked about earlier. So a lot of the Salt Lake area communities and MRFs in that area are also sending their plastics to Devil Slide. It is offsetting the coal. Their goal, again, is up to 40%. Right now, they're at about 30% waste-derived fuel to offset their coal. It is regulated by the state of Utah, and we found no record of any violations of their permits in the last 3 years. Next one. And that's a looking down at the facility from up top. I'm up on, I took this from on top of the feed silo, where all of the materials are blended together and dropped down into the kiln. So it was a fascinating site to visit, but it was cold. So any questions about either Renewalogy or the Devil Slide facility and cement kilns?
Mr. Chair, I just have a couple of quick questions, only because I have a 5 o'clock hard stop.
Okay.
I just wanted to check, there's been a little bit of publicity, or a little, just to cut to the chase, a little bit of things I've been hearing about potentially amounts of bags that are kind of piled up. Is that just because of the slowdown with the equipment not being delivered to sort through the contamination of the softer plastics?
No, yes, and no. Right now, Western Recycling has about 3 loads on site, and that's about the max that they've had during the entire time of the program. The majority of the materials are being held right now because the city of Boise had requested that no materials be shipped out of here until they had a chance to find out more information about the life cycle analysis for the materials. And so it's really being held locally because of the city asking for more information about the use of cement kilns as an interim until Renewalogy's equipment is up and running.
Got it. No, that's really helpful, I think, context, and I can, kind of report that back for the rest of council and the mayor who have asked about that.
Yeah.
And then I guess the only other thing, and maybe more of a comment, but I do think that the social outreach, and especially the educational campaigns about reminding people, where do you get the bags, what can go in the bags, I think all of that kind of support is just really helpful for this type of program, and we should try to take advantage of all of the resources you all are offering.
Good comment. And I think it's probably time to do a little refresh of a lot of that information anyway.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment as well. For education and outreach, I would just love so much to see more emphasis placed on the hierarchy, reduce, 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 reduce. And if you can't, then throw it in this orange bag. But I think that reduction message is just so diluted, frankly, with the orange bag program, that it seems like a, magic fix, and it's not at all. And as you mentioned, Catherine, reduction is is our #1 goal. And I would just love to see us all pushing in the same direction. So if there's time for a refresh, time for more of a social media push, I would just love to see reduce in bold at the top of all of that.
I agree. You know, it's keeping that top of mind. It really is truly reduce, reuse, recycle. It isn't recycle, recycle, recycle. And some folks forget that as well. I had to say I was almost in tears having to get plastic grocery bags when I went to get my groceries this week. It was all wrong, especially given that it's Earth Week. So we have a lot.
I'll just append onto that as well, that this energy recovery is a step below recycle as well, right? So this is not actually recycling. So you have reduce, reuse, recycle, orange bag under that, right?
Exactly.
I just feel like that's not clear for the public at all. Yeah. This feels like recycling and it's not.
It's better than landfilling. It's better than alternatives for disposal, but it's absolutely not the ideal, which would be to recover those materials for new materials, new products.
I mean, and the ideal, of course, I'm sure we're on the same page, is not to recover them, but not to use them in the first place, right? Exactly. And I just feel like that message is so lost.
And I think it's interesting, you know, when I was thinking about this program from the very beginning, this ought to be the stuff that we don't have any alternatives to. You know, it's the toothpaste tubes. I don't know how I'd get toothpaste other than that. You know, it's my dog food bags. The dog food bag that's a solid plastic bag is still a better option than the old thing where we used to get a liner inside of a cardboard box. So finding ways to buy in bulk and reduce the amount of material we're producing overall. And then those things that we have no alternative to, we've got a solution for. And I think emphasizing that with folks is really important.
Mr. Chair, I'll sneak in one more comment because I have to run pretty soon, but I really appreciate Ms. Larson's comment about the messaging. And I think maybe that's a separate thing we could all take away in terms of maybe a separate meeting about how we message to Meridian in terms of the importance of reducing, you know, before we reuse and recycle and, you know, do these other alternative energy recapture programs. I mean, I watched a Frontline documentary recently about plastics that I thought was kind of shocking. You know, there's a recycling symbol on plastics, but it's very unclear to the public what plastics can be recycled. And I do fear, even with this type of program, that it's very unclear, like what can go in the bag, what can be recycled. And so I think, you know, maybe if we want to have separate solid waste discussions about our messaging for Meridian, that might make sense.
Thank you.
I have several additional questions.
Catherine, do you want to go ahead and address Bob's questions at this moment, or do you want to go ahead and, I think, Bob, your questions probably don't, well, they could be addressed now, or they could be addressed at the end of the presentation.
I'm mostly concerned with the capability of the Salt Lake facility renewal.
Eulogy?
Yeah.
Maybe those would be appropriate now, because I think you moved to the MRF in the next slides.
Yes, I do. So yes, Bob, go ahead, please.
When this facility has the equipment and it's installed and tested, what capacity will it have in terms of tonnage?
They are designing the facility for 10 tons per day, and we're generating 35 to 40 a month. So they definitely have the capacity for the amount of material we would generate out of this community. And we have first dibs, is the best word for it, on their production facility. So they can't set our material aside and run somebody else's. They have to run ours first. So that was part of the commitment they made to receive additional funding to support their program.
Is there anybody else who's already committed to them to bring in similar materials?
Not that I am aware of. We are We are first and number one.
I've seen the piles of orange bags down at Western. And are they being compensated for storing those things?
They are not. And Rick and I are in constant communication. We were trading emails and phone calls this morning. So Rick has never requested any compensation for that, but he certainly could do so if he felt he needed to.
It seemed to me.
He is paid for baling them and pulling them off the line as part of that processing fee for all of the materials that he processes across that line. And he has no management costs because other than storing them on site, he isn't spending any of his time or staff time looking for shipping options, looking for locations to send the materials, negotiating prices. He does not have to do any of that work. That is the responsibility of Reynolds folks.
Well, they are certainly taking up a lot of his space.
Yes, yes. And he reminds me of that regularly.
That's all.
Okay, good questions. So, energy bag audits. The
Yes.
audit was, yes, so we had the most recent audit conducted by MSW Consultants. They are out of the East Coast. They did it in early March of 2020. And next slide. There's a lot of data on these slides, so I want you to be able to look at them later on your own if you have more information that you need. So next slide, please. So we broke down the materials more specifically with this audit. So it's a little bit hard to compare audits, and you'll see that in the next slide. But in breaking it down, you'll see both the pounds and the percent. So targeted materials are the things we want to take in the program. Non-targeted materials are those that we don't want. In particular, we don't want any paper or other wastes. We definitely don't want number 1 PET or number 3 PVC. Most of the facilities that are taking the materials right now, PVC in particular is a big no-no, other waste as well. Paper is not ideal. Non-targeted number 2, HDPE, is kind of interesting in that it is acceptable both in pyrolysis and in the cement kilns. The reason Dow and Reynolds consider it a non-targeted material is it has higher value in the marketplace for recycling than for energy recovery. And they would prefer that those plastic bottles and jugs that are labeled number 2, like a milk jug, be put in the recycle bins loose, because that is really the highest and best use of those materials. Number 1 and number 3, the PET and the PVC, those materials are really a problem in energy recovery, and we definitely don't want those there. But PET, again, has high value in the marketplace and should really be kept loose in the bins. What we did with this audit, which is the most sophisticated audit that's been done to date, is we upped the number of bags that were audited from about 100 to 150. And we proportioned the bags per community population. So based on, the potential number of people who could participate in the program, we sorted out the bags and we collected 5 days worth of bags from every community. And we included this time drop-offs because Rick has a bin set up at Western where people are taking advantage of dropping off the orange bags. So next slide. Again, very busy, but you can dive into it later. So you'll see, Meridian's percentages and poundage as compared to Boise, Ada County, Garden City, Eagle, because they're both collected in the same trucks, and then the drop-off program. Boise had more pounds of orange bags, for example, because they're a larger community and they had more bags tested. And so you kind of have to look at the percent sometimes more than the actual pounds because it represents the community. Next slide. This is the fun one. Okay, here's where we are with our composition audit. And I don't know if you can slide this over a little bit. My screen, the most recent results are kind of blocked on the right-hand side. You might scale it down a little. Yeah. So if you can see it, what you will see is our contamination levels went way down. We're looking at 12% initially in the first audit that was done in May of 18, and we are way down from that now. So the education and outreach is clearly working, and folks are really embracing this program. And if you look at paper, cardboard, those other contaminants, food waste, really the percentages have gone significantly downward as the program has matured in the community. And as I said, the blank sections there with the May through June of 18 to 19, where you have more detail on PVC, LDPE, and PP and those things, it's because of the audit protocol being more robust, and we divided out the materials much more finely than they were in the past. It added some complexity and time to the audit, but it worked out very well for better information. And if you can go to the next one, I want to show you these. These were two of the photos from the audit. The auditor was asked that any bag over 3 pounds be pulled out and specifically evaluated, photographed, and weighed. Because the concern has been in other communities with those really heavy bags that they're full of contamination. If you will notice, 2 of the heaviest bags came from Meridian, and absolutely no contamination in either one, and we had around 4 pounds per each bag. So folks can really stuff these bags full, and they did a great job. And that to me was like an aha moment when we can see the amount of participation and that they did it right. And they did a great job. Some of the takeaways, I think, from the audit, and this will be great information based on the comments just a few moments ago, is really talking about the reduce, reuse, recycle, and recovery issues, and focusing on maybe some of the issues and the good things. And I could share these photos with you if you want to show people, hey, look what a great job our community is doing. And by the way, don't put these things in there, keep doing the right stuff. I think you can really take some of this audit information to help refine what you might want to focus on with education and outreach, and Dow and Reynolds and I are here to support you with that. Any questions about the audit information? Because I mean, there's a lot of detail there, and so hopefully you'll have some time to kind of dig into it a little bit, and you can definitely, with my contact information, fire me an email and ask me more specific questions too.
Mr.
You're
Chair.
going to provide us copies of this presentation?
Yes, Tom has it. So you can get a physical copy of it.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Catherine, it's Tom real quick. Can we get the full kind of granulated audit report from you and as many pictures as possible? The more information we have, the more we'd like to be able to share with the community around us to provide more education on the program. I don't know if I can provide you the full report, because the way the auditor did the program for Reynolds is they did Idaho, Omaha, Nebraska, Cobb County, Georgia, and New London, Canada. So that's in the full report, but I can give you a more, these are probably 3 slides out of a deck of 15 or so from the summary for the Boise area. So I can get you that with no problem at all, Tom. Excellent, thank you. That'd be perfect. I don't need everybody else. I meant our Valley specific information.
Yeah, and I've got that, and I will send that to you.
Fantastic, thank you.
But I didn't want to just overload you with all the details. I just pulled out some of the most significant slides. But I really am thrilled that the contamination levels have dropped so dramatically. That really helps market the materials. The lower the contamination we have, the more folks that are going to want the materials. If they have to spend a lot of time cleaning the materials up, the value to those end markets goes way down. And so the more we can have a clean product out there, the better it will be to market it, and the more opportunities we will have to recycle these into new products and new materials.
Members of the commission, further questions on the material we've received to this point?
I'd like to say it was a great presentation. And I am delighted with this information because I personally believe one of the things that we have to do is a major education program within our community to get people to adopt it more easily.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've always been pretty passionate about what can we keep out of the landfill and how can we do a better job. And this has been a project that I can really get excited about because it does get to all of those issues of reduce, reuse, recycle, and recovery. And I think folks have been pretty complacent about what we could do for a long time. And with all the Chinese changes, especially on plastics, it really made us rethink as a society what we do rather than dumping our materials on somebody else. What do we need to do with them ourselves? I think there's some really exciting opportunities coming, but it's probably still going to take 2 or 3 more years before we really start to build the markets. The cement block, the concrete block one really excites me because with all of the growth and development in this valley, we have folks that are making those kinds of products right here. Can we bring that manufacturing process right here to our own community? And I think there's some really great opportunities out there. So I get excited about it.
Mr. Chair, just a comment. To that end, Catherine, you talked a lot about, some of the different possibilities that are being developed. And I'd love to see, that backwards look each year on how the orange bags are actually being handled. Like what is not just what could be done or some of the options, but really a breakdown, here's 250 tons went here.
Yep.
I would really love that kind of transparency about what is actually happening with the orange bags, and then we can watch how it changes over time.
And I think that that's exactly where we will see it go. And I appreciate that. And I will pass that along to Dallin Reynolds about how important that is for communities to feel like they're invested properly in the program. Any other? Go ahead.
Is there any way to identify what % of Meridian households are participating in the program at this time?
Steve, that's a really good question. And there really is no way to do that. It would take such a concerted effort on the part of Western and Republic that it would be pretty darn difficult because every truck that comes in would have to be evaluated, counted and evaluated. And the amount of time and effort, I don't know that we could do that. We do know the numbers going through. And when Rick and I talked this morning, we talked a little bit about taking this audit data and refining his estimates because we're getting more and more information about the weight of the bags and the number of bags coming through. And so, we may be able to say that based on population numbers, this is the estimated percentage of folks participating in the program. Combine that with the retail sales data, we may have a better idea that way as well of where are the sales occurring. If we've got not Walmart, but Target that is selling them primarily in Meridian, maybe we can assess that, that number would better reflect how many people in Meridian are using the program. But it's going to take a lot of effort to sort of figure out at a community level what kind of participation we've got. It's something to keep working on.
Mr. Chair.
Proceed.
Catherine, just a real quick question. You actually provided me a fantastic segue. Are you able to provide the retail sales data for the city to us? So that'd be something we'd be very interested in getting to analyze ourselves, just seeing what sections of the city are getting them more for that targeted outreach approach. It's
a good question. I will ask.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, it's, Dow may, and not Dow, but Reynolds may come back and say, that's proprietary to Reynolds and to Albertsons or whoever that, but I'll see what I can find out and share that with you when I learn a little more about it.
Thank you.
It makes sense if we could do that. It gives us a better understanding. Obviously people shop in different areas. You may shop somewhere because it's on your way home, but it's not where you live. But we could at least maybe get a better idea of sort of the participation through the communities. And So I think that's kind of a fascinating approach as we go forward to sort of evaluate. So I'll see what I can find out.
Fantastic. The more granular, the better. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
we're not looking for profit margins or amount of money, made or anything. It's just units shifted.
Yeah, how many have been purchased, within a quarter in this section of the community? Or I don't know, we'll come up with something. I think that there's some really interesting things we can learn from the program.
Thank you.
All right, next slide. So what's coming? Reynolds has hired an international, very, very experienced firm with life cycle analysis to complete a life cycle analysis of the major outlets for the materials right now. That includes cement kilns, Renewlogy, Nexus. That preliminary report should be finished in the near future. I did have some conversation with the Reynolds folks today. They will have an independent peer review done on that report as well. And so depending on everybody's timeline and how the world kind of progresses here in the next few months, they expect a final LCA later this summer. But the preliminary data that they did share was they found that the cement kiln use, particularly if it's within 1,700 miles of the source of the materials, is a better use than landfilling and has a positive environmental and economic impact. Landfilling and pyrolysis at this point are nearly equal, which was an interesting finding. The reason, though, exists because pyrolysis is still an improving technology. It is still in the startup phases. It's a fairly new process. Long term, LCA suggests that pyrolysis will be a better outcome than landfilling the materials, but right now they're almost dead even. So the LCA process that they have developed will be regularly updated as new information is obtained from the different in markets and as new processes are added. So let's say the pallet deck manufacturer really speeds up and comes on board and is taking more and more materials. That will be added to the LCA analysis to determine whether that's the best and highest use of the materials. So I think that's pretty fascinating. Reynolds and Dow have put the grant program on hold right now because they really want to catch up with the markets. They need to know that they've got adequate markets to take the amount of materials that are being generated. In the last year, London, Canada has come on board and Lincoln, Nebraska. And so we've got all those communities generating materials now. And it's sort of that chicken and egg. What do you do first? Do you catch the materials so that you could divert them, or do you develop the markets? Or are you kind of going back and forth between the two? And so right now they've sort of put the expansion of the program a little bit on the side so that they can really focus on the market development. We have every other week team meetings on the market development aspect of it. And I will throw this out there. If you hear of anyone with what even seems like a halfway viable idea to take these types of plastics to make new materials or new whatever, pass it to me, because Dow has a team specifically devoted to finding those markets and finding ways to promote those markets. And so I found one where there's a professor at Arizona State University that wants to take recycled plastics like this and create filament fibers for 3D printers. And so can we help them develop that technology so that we could take these materials and make 3D materials out of them through 3D printers? I think, those sorts of opportunities are pretty unique and pretty exciting. So if you hear of anything, pass it along, because you never know, it might be just exactly what we want to do for our materials in this community going forward. So that is my last slide. Any questions on kind of where the future is going to be? And the future is very flexible and changes on a daily basis, I have to say.
Catherine, are you currently looking at expanding the program into Canyon County, or is the program with Ada County enough cats to try to herd?
Steve, that's a really good question. Canyon County had a little outreach from a couple folks over there that they were sort of interested. Canyon County is unique in that in order for the program to advance there, Republic and Western would have to do it from a drop-off perspective because all the materials are baled and shipped over to Western here, unbaled, fluffed up as Rick calls it, and then sorted. The bags just wouldn't survive baled twice. I mean, you bale them, you fluff them up, and they're just going to be destroyed. So it would have to be a drop-off program. So between the logistics of implementing a drop-off program in Canyon County that would be effective, and also because we have enough on our plate and we want to work on that market development more, the expansion of the program is just sort of on hold for those two very, very good reasons. But I don't know that anybody from Canyon County has reached out and said, wow, we really want this right now today. That hasn't happened.
Commissioners, questions or comments?
So that there needs to be a team in order to take those bags to Western Recycling. Is that the holdup?
Like the banker presentation, yeah. It was helpful.
Thank you. I should have done a sound check. How was my sound? Did you all hear me okay?
Very good.
Okay, good. I meant to do that in the beginning. And you will have the PowerPoint, and that includes all my contact information. And so please send me emails or give me a call if you've got any questions or you want to say, hey, how about X, Y, or Z, and I can follow up. I've made notes as we've gone along, so I can follow up on some of the questions and information.
Great.
I do have one question. On your last slide, you said that the cement kiln is better than the landfill within 1,700 miles. Can you elaborate on what standard you're talking about? Like what makes it better than?
So in the life cycle analysis, they look at both economics and environmental impacts that go cradle to grave. So from the manufacturing of the orange bags through the distribution of the bags, the customer purchasing them, using them, returning them, and then the bags going to the pyrolysis facility and including the pyrolysis process or the cement kiln process. All of that is analyzed for its economic and environmental impacts. And so the baseline is, okay, the alternative would be those materials would go in a landfill. How does this use compare to that with this life cycle analysis for economic and environmental factors? And it is a very, very detailed and specific analysis that is done for that. And if you're interested, I can send you links to how that process works, that kind of evaluation process. There are ISO international standards for this kind of work. And so the LCA firm has followed those standards in evaluating these end destinations and end uses of the materials.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Commissioners, further questions or comments?
Oh, a comment. This presentation was excellent, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate being asked.
Well, as I said at the beginning, we're very happy you could join us, Catherine, and give us some of the status of this thing. And I'm sure our communication path will stay open, and we'll definitely want to talk with you.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you. And that is the goal, is to have these communications as frequent as needed. And I'm available at any time for questions or follow-up. So please reach out. I really want to do that. That's what I've been hired to do, is to help out with the communications and coordination within this area.
So with that, we'll move on to action items. There is no old business. As far as new business, it's the Solid Waste Advisory Committee Subcommittee update. Tom, can you, or whoever as appropriate, go ahead and give a quick update?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I will handle this one for Commissioner Nelson just because we haven't met. Our update is very brief. At our last meeting, the subcommittee provided good direction. So during this period of shelter in place or a stay-at-home order, I've just been using the subcommittee's guidance to write up what we would consider to be the bones of the plan, which will be evaluated by the subcommittee at our next meeting. And then our hope would be to be able to present those to council within a month or so.
Thank you very much. And with that, then we move to a point where our next meeting will be May 27th. And so as usual, if there are subjects that we are not covering that you think are appropriate, please forward those subjects to Tom or myself and we'll work them into our schedule. If there's no further comments, then I think we've reached the end of the business that was on our agenda. With that being the case, then I guess we'll go ahead and call the meeting adjourned. It is now 5:28, and thank you for participating in the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman. Bye-bye.
Success.